Well, that's right, guys. It is the greatest time of the year. It is steelhead season. So we're going to talk about the Oregon Steelhead Report, what's going on throughout all the different zones. My name is Josh. I'm your host with In and On the Net Fishing, and let's get right into it. So notably, there's 3 different zones in the state of Oregon that we're going to really look at for steelhead. That's going to be the Northwest Zone, the Southwest Zone, and the Willamette Zone. Definitely make sure to subscribe, guys. We're going to keep doing these reports, and if you want to get them up to date, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell. Now, without any further ado, let's jump right into the report. So, I guess it should be noted that the last couple of weeks here in Oregon, we have had a lot of large rain events, which has obviously brought in steelhead all across the state. The first thing that we're going to talk about is we're going to talk about the Northwest Zone. A lot of the Northwest rivers have kind of dropped back into shape and the steelhead are starting to show up. There's definitely early returning hatchery steelhead to places like the North Fork Nehalem River, the Nicanacum River, and the lower Columbia tributaries. These are probably going to be your best bets to go and hit within that zone, but we'll talk about all of the other water bodies that are duly noted in the Northwest Zone. So I think the easiest way to do this is we're going to start from each zone and we're just going to go in alphabetical order. So the first thing we're going to start with is the Alsea River. So the Alsea River is definitely seen that early run of steelhead beginning to come in with that recent rain event that happened. So you're definitely going to find some steelhead in the Alsea River, mostly the lower parts as the fish begin to move up the system. There's definitely a lot of bank opportunities on the Alsea River, and there's a lot of hatcheries that visit that river, so it may be a good bet to check it out. Fish are still a little bit lower and you might need to work to try to find them in the river system. The water level on the Alsea River is a little bit high still. As that begins to plane and drop back down, I think we're going to find good success over at the Alsea River. Next, we're going to talk about the Kilches River. The Kilches River is still a little bit low, but it's starting to get into shape, and those early steelhead are definitely starting to show up in the Kilches. Keep in mind that on the Kilches River, all of the native steelhead is a catch and release fishery only. It is open for you to try and catch them, but if you catch a wild, you're going to have to let it go. Currently over at the Kilches, the numbers are a little bit low, and they're definitely going to begin to peak out as we get into January, moving in towards March. One thing to be noted over there, the Maples Creek Bridge was recently damaged from storms, and it may be a little bit before they get that cleared up. That being said, those of you in your drift boat, you're definitely going to want to have to scope out the launch and proceed with caution. All right, so now on to the lower Columbia tributaries. Now this is going to be Big Creek, Nat Creek, a few of those creeks over there. They all get returns of hatchery steelhead. So there's no doubt that those fish should be showing up here anytime. With the recent rain event, I would imagine there's probably some of them in the lower system, but you may need to wait for there to be an abundance of them in the system. Over at Big Creek, they've already recycled 132 fish. So there is some action going on up there, and that could be a good bet for the weekend. The fish are consistently showing up, and there is reports of catches, so that may be a good chance to go out and give it a shot. Now let's talk about the Miami River. The Miami River primarily gets a wild return, and it is catch and release only for those wilds. Those fish should start to show up at the mouth, and it may take a couple of weeks and a little more water for them to get up that system, but the Miami is a smaller system, and there is steelhead present currently in that system, so that could be a good opportunity as well. Just like most of the other river systems, the big peak is going to be as we go into January and moving in towards March. And how about the Nicanacum River? So one thing about the Nicanacum is that it has one of the earliest returns of hatchery steelhead. So with the recent rain event, there's definitely steelhead down in that system to go and be caught. There is still quite a bit of water though, and that water is going to need to come back down into shape. But there is reported steelhead in the river. This may be the best opportunity at an early steelhead before your 2023 license expires and you've got to move into the 2024 year. And then of course there's the Nehalem Bay and River. There is definitely steelhead present within those systems. The thing is that it's still a little bit high and the water is beginning to drop down into shape. Hopefully by the end of this week, this system will be prime. Typically this time of year, it's primarily wilds, and that's going to be a catch and release fishery, but of course, no steelhead is not fun to catch, even if we got to let it go. So it is a great opportunity at maybe some wild steelhead fishing. Again, like other river systems, its peak is going to be into January, moving into March. Now, how about the North Fork Nehalem River? The North Fork Nehalem also gets a very early winter steelhead run. So again, with the rain events, this could probably be a good bet to give shot. And we did get reports that after the last rain event that there was a lot of fish that pushed up into the river after that raise of water. As of now, the North Fork is a little bit low and it's dropping into shape. So hopefully that'll be a good opportunity within the recent days. However, it is definitely one of your best bets to try and land you a hatchery steelhead before the end of the year, or even in the beginning of the next year. Now, of course, there's the Nestucca River. The Nestucca has one of the largest returns of hatchery steelhead, so obviously that's going to be a good place to go try and chase some steelhead. It's just a matter of getting the fish into the river system. With the recent high rainwater, we're sure that some steelhead have definitely moved into the system, and maybe a little while before we start to see big numbers. However, those steelhead are definitely present and they're worth the drive. However, if you want to hit it in the best time, a lot like the other rivers, we're looking at January and March is going to be your peak times. However, we do have recent reports of fish being caught, so might have to make a drive over there. Then there's the Salmon River. So the one thing about the Salmon River is that we have reports of there being plenty of steelhead that have moved up because of the rain event. However, the bite has been kind of finicky. So if you're a steelhead fisherman that really likes to try and go out and earn it, there's definitely fish present in this system. You're just going to have to probably do a lot of moving around and maybe a bunch of different bead or jig and different types of presentation to those fish, as it seems like they're being a little bit picky right now. A lot like the Alsea River, you guys, as that rain event came in, we saw a whole bunch of fish move in. Now it's just a matter of us to get on them. As we move out of the holiday weekend, it looks like the forecast is going to drop down and the river is going to end up prime. So maybe note this one on your notebook. Then we have the Siletz River. Like the Salmon River and the Alsea River, the Siletz gets an early run of steelhead, so this one shouldn't be overlooked either. From what I understand in recent reports, the influx of water, a lot of fish moved up, and most of them are going to be up by the Siletz Gorge. The gorge does provide some excellent bank fishing opportunities, so you might need to check out the Siletz. Then there's the Siuslaw River. So early on the Siuslaw, some fish have already been caught and reported, so there's definitely steelhead present in the system. Last week, the rain events were so high that the river was way too high, brown, and fast moving. There was diehards that were able to pull steelhead out of that heavy rain event, and we know that the fish were moving through with all of that water. It's just going to be a matter of it dropping back down into shape, which currently it is not in bad shape. It's almost prime. So this is going to be a good opportunity. As it stands after that rain event, the fish did slow down as the river is dropping back down into shape. However, we're definitely expecting another influx of fish to come in on the next rain event. Keep in mind that the Siuslaw is only open for hatchery steelhead. Now we've got Three Rivers. Three Rivers has definitely dropped down into shape and it should fish through the week. Just like the Nestucca, we're going to see the most influx of fish going into January, but that doesn't mean that you could not get you one in the last little bit of this year. And then on to the Trask River. The Trask is a little bit down on the low side of things, even though we had that recent rain event. It's coastal and it's not that long, and so water spills out into the ocean pretty relatively quick, and the rain event begins to stabilize back down pretty fast. So it is a little bit on the low side, but it's most certainly fishable, and we know from that last rain event that steelhead were pushed up into the system on the Trask. The thing about the Trask is that there's no known hatchery steelhead on the Trask, so it's going to be a catch and release fishery for those wild, big, beautiful steelhead. Then of course, next door to the Trask, there's the Wilson. The thing about the Wilson is it gets one of the largest hatchery steelhead releases for the coast. The steelhead have begun to start showing up on the Wilson, but of course we're going to begin to see those peaks into January. And then lastly, for the northwest zone, we've got the Yaquina River. On the Yaquina, there's steelhead like all over the basin are beginning to show up. They're showing up in smaller numbers, and we should expect to see a lot more steelhead as we move into the new year. Now we're going to move on to the southwest zone. So the most notable thing in the southwest zone is the Umpqua River. We should definitely consider going and fishing the Umpqua River. We know that we've got an influx of fish going in, and we're already beginning to see fish showing up at Winchester Dam on the North Umpqua River. So the entire main stem of the Umpqua is going to be a good bet for steelhead, as there's plenty of them in the system. But we'll get to the Umpqua here in just a minute. First, we're going to talk about the Chetco River. So the Chetco River seems to have a lot of steelhead around all throughout the system, but the pressure is really low. There's not a lot of people out trying to chase them on the Chetco. The one thing about going and chasing them on the Chetco is that the salmon are still around and very present, so this is probably why a lot of people are not out there, and if you go try to chase the steelhead, just definitely make sure to respect those spawning Chinook salmon. And then we're on to the Coquille River. So the Coquille River went really high from the recent rain event, and as rains are continuing, the river is staying high. We're pretty sure that the steelhead are probably in the system right now because of all of that water, but it's still a little bit tough to fish right now. The best bets on the Coquille is to be doing some plunking rig with some spin glow. With that high water and that low visibility, you're gonna have to smack a steelhead right in the face. As the river levels begin to drop, we should start to see the fish on the North Fork Coquille. And the Elk River. We currently don't have any reports of catches over on the Elk River, but this is a good time of the year to go start looking for those steelhead right now. The river should be in a decent shape. It might need to drop a little bit lower, but now is a good time to start hitting the elk. Then there's the Illinois River. Let's definitely make sure to keep in mind that there is catch and release on winter steelhead in the Illinois River. Definitely make sure to check the regulations in case they change, but there's certainly steelhead in the Illinois River to be caught with all of the recent rain events. And that brings me to the mighty Rogue River. So down on the lower section of the Rogue River, the fishing has been pretty decent, with a few reported catches of steelhead down on the lower system. Those winter steelhead are definitely moving through as that influx of water is going on, but the river is not absolutely out of control. It's on the higher side, but it is dropped down a little bit into shape. It could be worth going and giving a shot. From what I understand over there, the bank fishing has been a little bit difficult, but if you can get yourself inside of a drift boat out on the water, the boats have been having more success on the winter steelhead. And don't forget, guys, that they have that new regulation for the southwest zone for you to be able to fish for steelhead on the Rogue River and some of the other places inside the basin, so make sure you pick up that extra permit. One thing about the lower Rogue system, guys, is they do have the wild steelhead retention. So starting December 1st, you were able to keep a wild on the system, but you're reminded that you need a new wild steelhead card because it's going to go off of year. So if you had already gotten your 3 for the 2023, you're going to need the new 2024 regulations because they go from December 1st all the way into April, but you will be able to keep 3 wild steelhead over on the lower Rogue. So for the middle Rogue, guys, it's kind of middle ground. Currently it's at 1,600 cubic feet per second, which isn't bad. And we do know that the steelhead are working up through the system. The Rogue is such a large system that we are still, seeing the mixture of the summer steelhead mixed in there as well, which is kind of interesting to go catch summer steelhead in the dead of the winter, but it can be fun. So the middle section right now is, those fish are beginning to move up, but it's going to be a little while before we really see the influx of those winters up in the middle system of the Rogue. Now, as we move up to the upper Rogue system, this is where we're running into the summer steelhead that are left over. From what I understand, the summer steelhead fishing up there has not been bad. It's been decent and fair at best. and anglers are picking them up. The river isn't in too bad a shape. It's at about 1,200 cubic feet per second. And the last report, there was 3,300 steelhead over the Coal River hatchery, and those were summer steelhead. It's obviously going to be a little while before we see the winters make it up that high. Then we've got the Sixes River. So the Sixes River hasn't been doing too much. You would imagine that in between the recent rain event that steelhead have got to be in the system, but there hasn't been any reported catches of those winter steelhead yet. One would imagine that there probably is a few fish around if you're willing to get out there and work for them. Then we've got 10 Mile Lake and 10 Mile Creek. Steelhead have definitely begun to move into these systems and will eventually make their way up into the lake. Currently down at the mouth is going to be your best bet as the steelhead begin to move on. And then there's of course Eel Creek, but we're reminded that you cannot start fishing Eel Creek until January 1st. So keep that in mind and make sure that you're not fishing in a spot that you can get a ticket. Now we make it back over to the Umpqua River, like we spoke about earlier. Again, I'm not going to reiterate too much, just simply that the main stem Umpqua River has definitely got plenty of steelhead inside of it. It's a big river, and there is a lot of that river system that is private property, but there are a few rec points that you can get inside there, or you can get on a boat. Like I said, we're beginning to see fish start to go up the North Umpqua River, and so we know that there's plenty of steelhead in the main stem. It may be worth the time. As far as the north goes, keep in mind too that we're just starting to see those fish come up over Winchester Dam. So it's going to be a little while. However, winter steelhead, there's enough water inside the North Umpqua River that they will begin to move up quick. So that doesn't mean that the upper system of the North Umpqua isn't going to start to see steelhead here anytime. You could be one of the first ones to pick one up, so I definitely wouldn't hesitate to give it a shot. So now the South Umpqua River. The thing about the South Umpqua River is that it may be a little bit early for the South. However, because we know that the steelhead are in the main stem Umpqua and are beginning to go up the north, we can assume that the winter steelhead are also beginning to head up the South Umpqua. Some of the upper system of the South Umpqua can be great up towards Riddle, Canyonville, places like that. However, the steelhead will probably be more towards mid-January before we start to see some good numbers up in those areas. So that brings us to working on to a new zone, the Willamette Zone, the Clackamas River. So as far as the Clackamas River goes, we know that we've got steelhead traveling up the Columbia River, and they are definitely beginning to show up into the Willamette River and up into the Clackamas River. The steelhead are going to be, primarily into that January time frame as they're traversing from one river to another and yet a third river. That distance is going to take a little bit of time. But those steelhead are most certainly beginning to show up and people are starting to fish for them. Then we have our coastal fork, Willamette River. This river system is open year-round for you to chase hatchery steelhead, and it's open for wild steelhead over 24 inches in length. As of November 1st, however, the regulations have changed to artificial, lure, and fly only, but the steelhead are definitely present, and it could be a good time to go throw a spinner. Then we've got Eagle Creek. Now, Eagle Creek has already got a fair amount of winter steelhead inside of it already, and we are projected to see even more numbers coming into Eagle Creek in the next coming months. This could be a good opportunity to go chase some winter steelhead. The fishing over there definitely remains to be a little bit difficult with the low water conditions. However, it should begin to shape up as we get more rain into the region. Most of the successful efforts have been down near the mouth, but with forecasted rains, those fish are going to start to move all up and down the system. Then we've got the McKenzie River below Leeburg Dam. This is another river system in the area that starting November 1st, the river switched to artificial lure and fly, and so you're going to want to keep that in mind. This is another one of those systems where you are allowed to keep a adipose fin-clipped steelhead and a non-adipose fin-clipped steelhead that is greater than 24 inches. The fishing is a little bit slow for steelhead down there. Again, we have another river system where the fish are going to have to go from one river to another to make it over to the McKenzie, and it is a decent distance before they get in that system. So we're going to see peaks into February, and it might be a little bit early to go chase them over there in the McKenzie. Then we've got the Middle Fork Willamette River, which is open for your hatchery steelhead and for your thin clipped adipose steelhead that are over 24 inches. Again, this is an upper river system. It's a few miles back. I'm sure again with rain events that there's probably few steelhead in the system. That doesn't mean that you couldn't catch one, but they're going to be the unicorn. As we move on further into the year, we're going to see a lot more steelhead showing up in the Middle Fork. Then we have the Sandy River. The steelhead have been reported in the Sandy River, most of them in the lower section of the river. As we begin to get into more rain events, again, those steelhead are going to move up the system, but currently most of the success is being found down in the lower system of the Sandy. The Sandy River is expected to hopefully drop into shape very soon. Then we've got the Santiam River. First, let's talk about the North Fork of the Santiam. So the best time to fish the North Fork Santiam is around 3,000 cubic feet, and the river right now is currently over 6,000 cubic feet. So water's rushing through very, very fast, and we've definitely got steelhead moving up that system. However, it's a little bit too high to start chasing the steelhead over there. Again, this doesn't mean that you couldn't catch them. This is more of a plunking type opportunity. Gonna have to hit that steelhead directly in the face for him to do anything, because it's going to be a low visibility for that fish. He's gonna have a hard time seeing any presentation from a decent distance. However, as the river begins to drop down into shape, I think we're gonna see a lot of steelhead all up and down that entire system. Then we have the South Fork Santiam River. Again, the fishing here is usually best around 3,000 cubic feet. The river is currently at 1,400 cubic feet. So we kind of have the exact opposite of the North Fork. There's not a whole lot of water, not enough water for this system to be prime yet for those steelhead. One thing to keep in mind is that this river is definitely very mucked up with the downdraw of green peter right at the moment, and it may be a tough system to go and fish. Well, that's it, guys. That's the entire steelhead report. Definitely make sure to subscribe, hit the notification bell so that you can get updated the next time we do a report. We plan on doing some steelhead, salmon, and other different reports for the entire state of Oregon on the regular, so make sure to follow us and subscribe. Until next time, guys, we will see you.